So let's just jump right in. Picture this: a global crisis point, a geopolitical powder keg that's tied directly to our energy supply and could just explode at any moment. Now, what if the solution wasn't another war, but something, well, something completely out of left field? We're about to explore a pretty provocative idea that connects global energy security not to the Middle East, but to a small nation in South America.
And this quote, wow, it gets right to the heart of the problem, doesn't it? It's not just some faraway hotspot. For the global economy, it really is a ticking time bomb. Think about it. A huge chunk of the world's oil has to squeeze through this one tiny channel. If that closes for any reason, the shockwaves would hit us all, at the gas pump, in the stock market, everywhere.
And that brings us to the big question behind this whole analysis. When you're facing the enormous human and financial cost of another potential conflict, is there another way? The source material we're looking at poses a thought experiment that is, to put it mildly, pretty unconventional. To really get why this alternative idea is so radical, you first have to understand the threat. So let's break down exactly why the global oil market is balanced on such a razor's edge.
And look, this is why it's so much more than just a traffic jam for oil tankers. The first domino to fall? Sure, the supply gets disrupted. But the real fear, the thing that keeps strategists up at night, is that last domino: escalation. A regional war that would be absolutely devastating on every level. Our reliance on this one choke point creates this constant simmering vulnerability for the whole system.
All right, so let's shift gears from the problem to the proposal. And this is where things get interesting. It's really important to remember what the subtitle says here. This is a provocative thought experiment. It's a way to challenge our usual thinking about geopolitics and energy. And wow, this lays it out so clearly. On one side, you've got the grim, predictable, and unbelievably expensive path of military conflict. On the other, you have a peaceful partnership. The contrast is just stark. Immense cost versus a tiny fraction of the price. Human suffering versus a solution where not a single shot is fired. Instability versus a real chance at stability. So let's flip the coin for a second. What would this radical idea actually mean for Suriname? The country has a really complex history, and this proposal suggests it could be a way to move from a very difficult past toward a much more prosperous future.
You know, to really understand this opportunity, we have to be honest about the challenges. Since it became independent back in '75, Suriname has had to navigate some serious hurdles: political instability, major economic problems, and that classic curse of being dependent on exporting raw materials. This context is absolutely crucial to understanding why such a radical change might even be considered.
And here's the potential prize for the Surinamese people. The argument goes that this kind of deep partnership wouldn't just be an investment, it would be a total transformation. We're talking about using that capital to build new hospitals, schools, roads, basically upgrading the entire foundation of the country for its citizens.
Okay, now let's flip back to the other side of this thought experiment. What's the strategic win for the United States? Well, it really boils down to three things: oil, influence, and a chance to redraw the geopolitical map.
11 billion. That's the estimated number of barrels of oil equivalent they found in the Guyana Suriname Basin. That single number changes everything. This isn't just a small find. It's a globally significant energy reserve, and it's sitting right there in the Western Hemisphere.
So, the crucial point here is that this isn't just about oil. It's about strategy. Getting direct access means you can diversify away from volatile places like the Middle East. It strengthens America's position in its own backyard, and it acts as a pretty big counterbalance to China's growing economic influence in South America. From a purely geopolitical point of view, the logic is, well, it's pretty compelling.
But of course, an idea this radical is absolutely loaded with enormous obstacles. We have to move past the theoretical benefits and look at the massive real-world hurdles, starting with some of the most basic principles of our modern world. Sovereignty. This one word is maybe the biggest barrier of all. The entire system of international law is built on this one idea, that nations have the right to govern themselves. Any proposal, even a peaceful one, that looks like it's violating this would face just immense global opposition. And the risks here are profound. I mean, even if you imagine a perfectly peaceful democratic process, the diplomatic fallout would be huge. You'd immediately hear accusations of neo-imperialism. It could create all sorts of tensions with neighboring countries. And most important of all, For it to have any legitimacy whatsoever, it would require the clear democratic consent of the Surinamese people themselves.
So, as we start to wrap this up, the source material makes one final crucial pivot. It uses this whole radical thought experiment to land on a much deeper point about Suriname's future, one that honestly has nothing to do with America.
And this quote, this is the real takeaway of the entire analysis. The future of Suriname isn't going to be decided by the quantity of its oil, but by the quality of its governance. External powers are always going to be interested in a country's resources, but that interest doesn't build a nation. That has to come from within. Because ultimately, whether it's through some radical partnership or a more traditional path, you just can't import or impose lasting prosperity. It has to be built from the inside out. The real test isn't which path Suriname takes, but whether it can build the strong institutions and responsible leadership it needs to turn all this oil wealth into a blessing for all its people.
Which leaves all of us with this final, powerful question. Is oil wealth a blessing or a curse? History is just littered with examples of both. For Suriname, a country standing right on the brink of a massive oil boom, this isn't some academic question. It's the defining challenge of its future. And it's a challenge that will be absolutely fascinating to watch unfold.